And all right, here we are on this episode of Gators Breakdown with Gator great Danny Wuerffel, Heisman Trophy winner, national championship quarterback, statue right outside the swamp. Joining us right here on Gators Breakdown. Danny, you shouted at me Monday evening as we were walking down at the press conference, and I was like, who's that voice? And I was like, it's Danny freaking Wuerffel calling my name. So 13-year-old me right now cannot believe this, by the way.
Oh, man. Well, it's good to be with you. I've learned a lot in the last, I guess, 6 weeks or so, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about it. But I've gotten to know and listen to a lot of different people covering the Gators. And I just want to give you a shout out. Every time I've heard you talk about anything, and there's been a lot of things to talk about recently and a lot of things that get people riled up. I've just always felt that you covered things in a fair way, in a kind way. You didn't shy away from stuff, but you also just did things in a way that I really respected. So one, good job. And then secondly, when I talked to a couple of people, I'm like, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. I love to kind of share the story of how I experienced this coaching search and who should I talk to? And like right out the gate, people are like, oh, you need to talk to Dave. Talk to this guy, Dave. He's a good guy. You'll like him. Go for it. So you come highly recommended, my friend. I'm glad to be here with you.
It means a lot. It means a lot coming from number 7 right there. So certainly glad we could hook up here. By the way, so I knew first of all, Gator fan growing up, of course, watching Danny, and then I knew you were an even bigger deal when you had one of these made.
Ooh.
I was a big starting lineup fan growing up.
Okay.
Too many of them, and then they didn't really make college ones, but then they had this little Heisman edition that they came out with, and there is the one Danny Wuerffel there. So in mint
there you go,
unopened, mint condition, all good stuff there. All right, Danny. Of course, we're getting together on the hills. Jon Sumrall getting hired as head coach for the Gators, and as you mentioned, just so much that went on. Basically, since the time Billy Napier got fired, and of course, really heated up the last couple of weeks as well, with the search coming to an end. Who would it be? Would it be Lane Kiffin? Would it not be Lane Kiffin? And then if not Lane Kiffin, where would Florida go after that? So first of all, how did it start where you got involved with the search, and how involved actually were you with the search?
Well, back several weeks back when the coaching change was made with Billy Napier, I just wanted to help. I think a lot of Gators care passionately and want to do something to be able to do it. And I thought, maybe there's something I can do in this process to help Gators football. I originally thought maybe, I have developed relationships with some of the players, and I thought, maybe when there's this interim time, maybe I could be a voice to help encourage some of our players to stick around, to not kind of mentally check out and give the new coach a chance when the new coach was hired. So I went and talked to Scott, and I said, I'd be happy to help with anything, whatever you think. And then he came back and said, hey, I really would like you to help be part of this search for a new coach. And so, part of me wasn't sure what that meant. I said, well, I'll be happy to give you thoughts. And he goes, no, I really want you to be a part of it. And then I remember saying, if I'm going to be a part of it, though, I don't want to just you go pick a coach and then tell people I was a part of it, and then I have to bless whatever you pick. If I'm going to be a part of it, I want to be part of it. He goes, no, Danny, I want you to be a part of everything. And so really, Scott Strickland, me, and assistant AD or associate AD, Duke Warner, were part of the entire process from beginning to end. I mean, dozens, maybe hundreds of Zoom calls with different people, working closely with Chad Chatlos at Turnkey ZRG. We also led the search for the GM. So it was kind of two completely different searches going on at the same time. We had some of the board of trustees that we would report to back from time to time that were very supportive. And so it was a long, amazing thing. I experienced things I had never imagined I would to land us where we are here with Coach Jon Sumrall.
Absolutely. So I don't want to dwell too much on the Lane Kiffin saga and all that. It's been talked ad nauseum, but one reason you wanted to get together, and you got with me Monday evening before we were able to leave the room there, is mentioned there's just so much misinformation out there. Information that's just been wrong. That's just floating out there the last couple of weeks, last couple of days about this Florida coaching search. Now, of course, Gator Nation had its sights set on Lane Kiffin being the next Gator head coach, but it didn't happen. So there's obvious questions, why didn't it happen? What happened? A lot of rumors out there, and of not wanting to work with Scott Strickland or booster involvement, misalignment behind the scenes at Florida. So where did the misinformation really stand out for you?
Well, it really is weird because I was involved in all these conversations, and there's a strong point where we were all feeling really positive about Lane Kiffin. All the signals he was given to us were very positive. I was on multiple text threads with Lane. We had visited with him and then gone to his house and had great conversations. And like all the indications we were getting were very, very positive until a while ago, it just sort of kind of went dark. And then you start trying to say, hey, man, we'd love to have you at Florida and what's going on. And so I think at some point it was just incredibly wise because we realized that was not going to happen to be able to continue, which we've been doing all along, the search, because you got to have all your people lined up. And so some of the things that just really made no sense when I would see them online would be, I think some of the misinformation perhaps were things that long before we actually talked with Lane were things that maybe he had mentioned to people that he was concerned about, and I think, he had heard word that we were moving towards a GM model and we're going to hire somebody. And I think, he had heard that Scott Strickland meddles all the time in the coach's football business and like tells them how to run his football team, which I thought was actually hilarious because Scott doesn't meddle at all. In fact, all of us.
That was what I got from it too, as well, with the whole, at least with Billy Napier. I was like, from what I could gather, was pretty separate.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we probably all wish he would have meddled a little more, right?
Right. So that was the question after the press conference of Billy Napier getting fired. It was, how much conversation was there about hiring an offensive coordinator and all that? And kind of to your point, is I've go kind of let my coach be the coach.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that was just something that somebody had put in Lane's mind. I didn't sense any of that. Scott and Lane's relationship seemed great. I was on a text thread with the three of us, and I could probably show you hundreds of texts that were just hilarious and funny and really good. I think we did a great job of presenting and pursuing Lane Kiffin as the coach. And for whatever reason, I've got some thoughts of my own. I think his son was a big part of this decision for him and where he wanted to go and play high school football. I think that was part of it. And some other things, there was a lot of talk early about the GM situation being a problem for Lane, but we cleared that up right away. So that was not an issue. But Lane just made a different choice. And I think what's frustrating was we all, us included on the inside, were very optimistic for a while, as well as the fan base. And so then you're thinking, man, this is great. There's rumors that there was like some kind of signed MOU or something. That's not true. And so it was just a tough thing, I think, for people to experience being so excited about one particular person. And then not only does that not happen, but then you see what seems like a desperate pivot to someone that seems very similar on paper to the last coach that no one's excited about. So there's just so much emotion out there. But, through this whole process, Jon Sumrall, from the very first Zoom that we did with him was just outstanding. And we met with him a couple times in person, and it was just really, really powerful. And the way that he talked about leading people, the way that he talked about seeing offense at Florida, which was obviously a big question for me. And then just the way that he takes feedback and listens and tries to grow. He's a very unique, different person. I think, as he said, no two people are alike. And I'm super pumped. I think even a lot of Gator fans in the last, week or so, when you see more and more of the things play out at Ole Miss and LSU, I think there's even some Gator fans that are even like, man, maybe we dodged a bullet there. Who knows? But I do know this. I am fired up about Jon Sumrall. We led a really cool process that got us to Jon, and I'm really thankful he's our coach.
Good deal. Good deal. One more thing I want to go with the Kiffin thing, and then I do want to go a lot more into Jon as we move forward. And maybe fair or not for me, but also I said fair or not. Since the sights were set on Kiffin, that if Florida didn't get him, Florida would lose control of the narrative. Now, look, I know a lot of the process has to be kept secret. And, I guess, was there anything Florida could have done differently or better manage the misinformation that was out there? Like, I know not everything can be out there. And when you're running a search, you want to be quiet as much as you can. But was there anything behind the scenes that maybe could have helped lighten the situation once the pivot of Lane Kiffin to Jon Sumrall, whoever the next person was going to be?
Well, I mean, I don't think there was anything else we could have done. We were just pursuing as fast as we could, and doing our best job, going at kind of the tier one candidate, if you will. Um, some of the things I think that added salt to wounds at that time were stories like Lincoln Riley reached out, and we didn't want to talk to Lincoln Riley. So, multiple, I saw that all over the place, that Lincoln Riley and his agent, Trace Armstrong, reached out, and Scott Strickland didn't even take his call. So, like, if I were a fan and I heard that, I'd lose my mind, because, like, he's an amazing coach, and you play quarterback for him, and you, like, have a chance to win a Heisman Trophy. So, like, I'd be crazy mad in that situation, except for it's not only not really true, it's the opposite of true. Like, we reached out as many times as we could to talk to Lincoln Riley. We'd love to talk to Lincoln Riley. Who wouldn't? But for whatever reason, maybe he wants to stay at USC, or I don't know, maybe he has another job that he'd lined up that he hasn't announced yet, but he didn't want to talk to us. And in fact, Trace Armstrong's not even his agent. So, like, he was, but he's not anymore. So that's just patently and false. There was another one that hit right at that same time, that, Turnkey was so frustrated with us that they fired us. And that was a silly untruth. We had a great relationship with Chad all the way through, beginning to the end. I was texting with him today, and we're all just really pleased with the process and working together. So I think there was multiple things that happened there at that time that just made people really upset. And so, I don't think there was too much we could have done differently. If you have any suggestions, I'd be happy to hear it. We all love feedback and how we can do different. From where I sat inside that journey, it was just really, really impressive to see how everybody operated and to see how Scott led. And then when I, like, open up my phone and look at Twitter and see him just getting maligned every which way, and for many things that really weren't even true, made me feel bad for Scott. I don't get paid by Florida. I wasn't paid to do any of this. I'm not a PR person on their behalf. But it was an impressive process. And I'm really pleased with where we landed.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because part of that was, it did seem like up until, I guess, last Friday, maybe it was, where even people I talked to who may or may not be in the know, but it did seem the narrative at that time was Scott was doing a pretty good job of leading this thing. And that had kind of really been before we knew there was going to be a pivot away from Kiffin and who the next person was going to be. And then, like you said, then all of a sudden it just flooded in once we got word that, hey, Kiffin's no longer considering Florida. It is going to be staying at Ole Miss or going to LSU. And then you started seeing this long laundry list of stuff. So I guess it was just part of the journey. And like I said, I know the situation you guys are in. You can't really update everybody with every little twist and turn and nook and cranny of a coaching search. But I guess that's probably what played into it a little bit, what little breadcrumbs there were. And then when there actually was information, the information was it's not going to be Kiffin.
Yeah. And I mean, he's an exciting guy. He's an explosive offensive guy. He was like, probably the top coach on everybody's board this cycle. And so, and then when you get excited about that, and when people and fans and all of us even too, when he's indicating and giving you signals that, like, he's wanting to come, you feel great. And then when that doesn't happen, it's frustrating. So, I mean, I get it. I think we all lived through that. There were times where I would say to Scott, I'm like, Scott, you think we should say something here? You're really getting, like, people are hating you. Like, there's petitions to get you fired, and, like, they're going to protest you. This isn't the world I live in. I live in a world where, like, at Desire Street and the Wuerffel Foundation, like, we trust each other. We all work well with each other. We're not, like, trying to sabotage people, and there's no agents trying to sneak the media towards their, like, it's a weird world out there. And, he's just like, Danny, Gators are passionate and Gators want to win, and we haven't won. So they're mad. I get it. They're mad at me. I get it. When we win, Gator fans will be happy, and that's the only thing that's going to change it. And so I just have a lot of respect for him. I think he's got really thick skin. I think he's borne a lot of the negativity, which it go, when you're at the top, I was a quarterback. When things went well, I got all the praise, and when things went bad, I got a lot of the blame. And he's the AD. That's just how it works. He knows that, but I just felt bad for him because I thought he did a great job.
Now, Daniel, I will have to be honest, and listeners have certainly let me know they've heard you on the various shows throughout the week, and some don't trust how the administration or the UAA handle things behind the scenes, and
Sure.
maybe feel like you're being forced or put in the position to play defense here. Now, I know the type of person you are. A lot of people know the person you are and conviction in which you speak with, but what do you say to people that may have doubts or feel like this is some sort of damage control?
I mean, that would fit a narrative if you thought that happened and this is happening. You would think that. I don't know what else to say to them. I was there, and I'm telling you the experience that I had and the things that I thought were true. Trying to think if I'm trying to slant anything for any reason, but I really don't have any motivation to do that. But I get it. I was very frustrated with a lot of things, and I think a lot of Gator fans are frustrated. And when you have gaps, you fill in the gaps, and then you got to sort of make sense of that. So I don't blame anybody, but I am who I am, and this is how it went.
I'm kind of glad you said that too. That's where I went to. Is just like if you believe, just believe what you want to believe. At this point, nobody's going to really change your mind with whatever you believe out there. So we want to just try and get the word out there of what went on behind the scenes here. So, Danny, as we move past all that, when and how did the search get to Jon Sumrall? You mentioned Turnkey and working with them. How instrumental were they in finding Jon Sumrall, or was it really more of you or Scott? I mean, I know that you have some history in New Orleans, of course. I don't know if there's any connection there, but there's kind of a few angles I think you could attack at how it got to Jon Sumrall.
Yeah, well, I think you kind of start with is this cycle. Like, what are the coaches out there that are available? And you kind of gather data. I think Turnkey did a fantastic job of sort of putting the landscape of all the coaches that could be on the board and doing a lot of due diligence. And I've seen more stats, I think, in the last 6 weeks than I've seen in my life about things. And so you kind of get a picture of that. And, you tend to think, okay, who are the, maybe you go with tiers or grades, however you want to do it. But like who would be like the top tier coaches? And, at this year, how it started, there'd have been like, man, if you could talk to Kurt Signetti, like that'd be a guy you'd want to talk to, right? A guy like Marcus Freeman, and a guy like Lane Kiffin, and kind of in this cycle, those were sort of the three kind of guys that jumped off the page. Now, everybody knows, no matter who you get, you're guessing. Like it's a risk. The chance of anybody coming into any school and winning a national championship, it's really tough. It's really hard to do. So you're just trying to think what gives us the best chance in our situation right now. And so in that case, there was really only one coach left on the board. Marcus Freeman wasn't interested in moving. And so you focus on Lane, but then you got to say, okay, we got to be building the profile of all the other guys out there. You look at sitting head coaches for sure. You look at sitting head coaches maybe in the P4 and then the G5. You look at coordinators. We considered guys that were in the NFL. The other factor that I don't think people quite understood in this is the timing of it. We in early October we're pretty quick to be without a coach, which in some ways gives you some time. But none of the coaches were really interested in talking right away. And so there was there was a bit of a dead period. And I think, Lane really wanted to wait and talk until the week that they played Citadel. I guess for him, that was
Right.
easier. Might have a little more energy. Or time. So we were waiting. I think a lot of the other coaches just assumed we were going to get Lane because that was one of the narratives. So they weren't all excited to talk right away. So you're kind of waiting. You're doing your due diligence. You're putting all these people together. Jon Sumrall was the first Zoom that we did. Had a great early conversation with this guy. It was very impressive. We kind of got off the call and we were debriefing. And I said, man, that guy's pretty impressive. And I mean, I didn't know a whole lot. I'm like, he's probably gonna be moving up, huh? And Chad Chatlow said, Daddy, he goes, if you guys don't hire him, you just need to know you will be playing against him in the SEC soon. Everybody wants him. Okay. So, and then we just sort of methodically went through the list. We tended to Zoom with a lot of people first and then if so, we would move forward, and then try to get in-person meetings with people, which got really interesting because we want to keep it secret, but the coaches really want to keep it secret. They don't want that out there. So sort of planning the trips, all these things has just been like a CIA agent, flying here, flying there. I can't tell you all our tricks on that, but that was I felt like Jason Bourne.
Hammond, Louisiana became a hot place of location.
Yeah, you never know. Can't tell you. Remember helicopters, bungee jumping. We had some parachute trips, kayaks.
So you're telling me Tom Cruise was on one of the flights?
He is. He actually got us where we needed to be. So that was part of it. But so we kind of go through all that stuff, and then you kind of keep discussing like who and what is jumping out, and immediately there's things about Jon that were like so powerful. His leadership, his edge. It's a warrior game, even though it's there's finesse and there's skill players. Like it's still a combat sport, and who can lead young men into combat is a really important piece of this puzzle. And he had that obviously, and I think he had some other traits of leadership that I really admire. Like one of the things that to me set him apart from a lot of people was his dogmatic insistence on evaluation of everyone, including himself. He has a process and even a company that they use to get feedback. Like, what am I missing? What are my blind spots? Like when you find a leader that's still looking for their blind spots, that's a pretty powerful thing. Most leaders in any realm of life that I've seen, football coaches, once they're the boss, they kind of feel like they have all the answers. I've heard the term, they're the smartest person in the room. And so that piece was really powerful. The big question for all of us, for me, of course, was like, okay, we wanted an offensive guy, right? That was a kind of a big key in this search. And when you move in to talk to Jon Sumrall, you're obviously missing that big piece. But he immediately, we in our Zoom, he said one of the things, he started talking about running 11 and then a lot of 10 personnel at Florida. And I said, Jon, what's 10 personnel? And he said, Danny, he was confused. Like, how do you not know it? I'm like, no, Jon, I know what 10 personnel is. It's, one running back and 4 receivers. I just haven't seen it in years here. And so the fact that he was even talking about 4 receivers on the field at a time, he was a guy that was convinced that, he did what he had to win at Tulane, but to win at Florida, he'd need a new offensive coordinator. So had he been like, no, I'm coming and this is my guy, then my red flags go up. But no, he's like, I'm coming and we're going to, and here's 3 or 4 guys that I'm going after. And I think we can get them, and he was very just diligent about that piece. And then, as this process went on, it became also really clear that Auburn was about to sign him. Ole Miss was going to want him as soon as they were gone. Arkansas and had Kentucky been job open, they'd have been after him. Like he was not just some other guy. He was the guy that everybody wanted. And so I think it was a really great move as we began to hone in on him. Did a second trip to his house to just kind of be present. He also really got behind the concept and the idea of the GM model. And we had not hired a GM yet at that time because we really felt like the marriage of the two, but the GM search was going concurrently. And at that point, Dave Caldwell was the guy that we felt the best about. So we actually brought Dave on that last interview to kind of give Jon a chance to meet Dave and Dave a chance to meet Jon. And that went really well. And so we felt really good about that. And then we got into the negotiation. And this is just a side piece, but I'm particularly happy that we signed a guy that had an agent that was not named a certain name that seems to represent everybody else. And that I had some satisfaction in that.
Yeah, probably made it a little bit cleaner. I would imagine a little bit better of a process there. So we all know what was out there, all the noise, of course, when the pivot from Lane Kiffin to Jon Sumrall. And not giving him a whole lot of credit, for all the noise that was out there, and say, hey, Florida's where I'm going to go. Florida's where I want to go. I'm assuming he heard some of that, and this was just a job that he wanted. And look, I asked him about it at the press conference. What factors and assurances he needed to hear from Florida for him to want to take the job. So what was Florida's pitch? when you guys were going through the process to Jon Sumrall?
Oh, I mean, he was clearly excited about this job from the beginning. He's been doing a phenomenal job at a school with considerably less resources and ways to get things done. Every time he's developing players and doing well, they're all leaving. So he's rebuilding each year. So I think just the job itself was very powerful. He like straight out embraced like the fans. Like he's like, I love passion. And if they're mad, that means they're passionate. Let's go. And he's like, I know they're going to compare me to Billy Napier, but you know what? I'm not. Let's go. And so it's like every possible thing that you kind of thought maybe he wouldn't like, kind of like challenged him into doing it. And I think he really liked the idea of doing the GM model and like Dave, and he really liked Scott and Duke Warner, the other AD that was there. I will be working with him. He really liked him. So it was a really great sales job, great pitch. And I think we got there just in time, or Alvin would have got him. And so I feel really, really good about it.
What about on that angle, relationship with the NIL and that factor of it, and Florida Victorious, and working with boosters who are going to go a long way in helping your success for a bit? Was that any, or as much as you can share there, part of the conversation of we will have the resources to do what you want to do at Florida?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's every coach. You're talking to every coach, and that's one of their questions is, kind of where are you on the rev share and where are you on the NIL and what's your sort of budget for the year? And so to kind of be able to commit to be on the top end of that across the board, I think, so yeah, that's a big part of the conversation. And I think that was a powerful package that Florida had to offer to all the coaches. So yeah, that was handled really well. We've got great support. We've got a lot of great, passionate fans, and seems like they're excited for what's next.
Sounds good. A few more right here with Danny Wuerffel taking us through the coaching search right here with the Florida Gators, and my co-host Will Miles wanted to throw a couple questions in here as well. So he goes back. Sumrall said he had a long-term plan to win consistently. Can you lay out like what vision for the program he communicated to the search committee and why that vision makes sense for Florida? And you kind of go into with that. I asked about assurances from Florida towards him, but what about the other way? Were there assurances that Florida needed from Sumrall? And you kind of brought it up about the offense part of it, but what were some of the key questions that Florida needed to be sold on that you're the right guy?
Well, I mean, that's just part of the whole due diligence process. But like, you talk about what is their plan for building a roster. And, if somebody said, all I care about is the transfer portal, I'm going to build a team exclusively through the transfer portal, you'd have some concerns. But, he even said this at the press conference. He's like, the biggest thing you have to do is player retainment. You have to recruit your own players, develop your players, and give them a vision for why they want to stay. And then sort of your next base that you're building out of is recruiting. But you have to be careful now. This is something I've learned. You can't just pay 25, even if you could get 25-star kids and you pay them. Now a lot of your money is going to be in players that probably aren't going to play the first year. So another angle that's good, really a trick, or not a trick, but like a goal that everybody's got to figure out is how much of your money is on the field. Because you can have a lot of NIL money, but if it ends up being in backups, you're not maximizing that, and that's not an easy puzzle to put together. So how do you maximize that when you're talking about high school kids, or if this was the NFL, those would be your draft class coming in. It's different. And then third, how do you use the transfer portal? And I think his answers on all those fronts were great. He's passionate recruiter, as you talked. I think he said his hair's on fire for recruiting or something like that. Maybe you and I were recruiters and our hair was on fire too. But I think he's great at that angle of this. He's great with the kids, so I think that's powerful. The vision of how he sees everyone in the building working together and how he holds the people accountable was powerful. I also think the way that he looks at delegation and not trying to kind of micromanage all the things himself is very, very powerful. I think that's a refreshing thing to hear. So just kind of all these different things we're checking out, things that mattered. And then again, on the offensive piece, which made me cringe a little bit at first thinking of it conceptually with this guy, was very powerful when he talked about not being prompted at all, but just to say Florida demands and needs a wide open, powerful offense, and you've got the athletes to do it. We can get those athletes. He goes, and we're going to get offensive coordinator to fit that profile. You know, he also said something that I just thought was smart. It just makes sense to me. He's like, Danny, and I'm asking him, like, you know, this is great. You're telling us you're going to hire an offensive coordinator. Like, how do we know you're going to do that? And he's like, well, here's one reason. He goes, most of the really good offensive coordinators are playing for coaches that have offensive head coaches, so they don't get any credit. Like, it's, oh, well, you know, Charlie Weiss, it's just all Lane Kiffin, or, you know, the guy at Tennessee, it's all hype. He goes, Danny, when they come here and they're successful, everybody will know it wasn't me. They won't think it's me. They're going to get all the credit. They're all going to want to, like, that's just, you know, it's a great thing to think through. I thought that was impressive. And multiple things like that made you think this guy could do it.
Yeah, I thought about that angle too with offensive coordinators under offensive coaches. So hopefully that bleeds over into Florida right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
In their next OC. So next one from Will was for you here. Success 2 years from now is blank. Success 3 years from now is blank. Like Sumrall had instant success as a first-time head coach at Troy, and then kept going with what really Fritz built at Tulane and has kept it going. As we look here at Florida, I don't know how much immediate success we expect. We'll have to see who stays on the roster and who he hires as coordinators and coaches and the staff. But looking down the road, success is what in year 2? Success is what in year 3?
I mean, for me, we're talking about, you know, college football playoff. I mean, that to me is a wide, and it's not like it's just 2 teams like back in my day, or 4 teams like for a while. So, you know, there's a lot of spots there. It's super competitive to get in, but that's something that I would be hoping and expecting in year 2 or 3, that we're fighting and in the college playoff. You know, that I think that would be a very reasonable thing to think. We have high expectations at Florida, and he knows that, and that's why he's here.
Absolutely. There we go. That's what we wanted.
Hey, let me also say something. Is that your buddy Will? Is that the one that's stepping away from
Yes.
doing the writing?
Yes.
Let me just say something. Like, I've really enjoyed. He's one of the few things I get in the email, and I read kind of his stuff. So I want to give him a shout out. I think he does a great job. I was sad to hear that he was stepping away from that, but I did listen the other night when he was on explaining it. I think it was at the end of your podcast.
Yep.
And I was just so impressed with that. You know, a guy that is stepping away from something that he's really good at, that he's passionate about, because he wants to value his family and pour into his kids and be awake on a Sunday afternoon. And, like, you know, we're talking about Lane Kiffin and Jon Sumrall and these guys who are successful and making a lot of money. But I think there's different ways to count success. And to me, that guy deserves a shout out. So congrats, Will. Thank you for being a leader in that way.
Here, Danny. Absolutely. He told me Saturday. He kind of been hinting about it, and then he was at the game. He lives up in Philadelphia, so he didn't get to come down to many Gator games.
Oh, wow.
And his parents live in Gainesville, so he was in town for Thanksgiving, and we went off to the side a little bit from the tailgate. We talked a little bit of business, and that's when he let me know still wants to be part of Gators Breakdown, which I am very, very thankful for, but that he was going to step away from reading reactions. So I'm so glad that you did that. He's going to get a kick out of this when he sees it. So big move there for you, Danny, and thank you so much. Keeping it going here. I think we're good right there. I'm glad you caught us up on the search and what we could expect from Jon Sumrall, how he got here. And certainly after that opening press conference, I think Gator Nation was sold a little bit more than what they were beforehand. So if we could talk a little bit of football right quick, Danny, before I let you go. Obviously, DJ Lagway at the quarterback spot, you know, the position you hold oh so dear at the University of Florida, and did a lot of great things on that field. A little surprised how it turned out for him, and what steps would you look for him to be making next? You know, I'm not even talking about if it's at Florida or not at Florida or anything like that, but I'm just assuming he's here. What do you want to see what steps do you want to see DJ Lagway take, and maybe how he should go about this offseason?
Yeah. Well, I think it's easy to say, and he would say this, that it was a really disappointing season. So I don't think there would be words that I'd be even have to say, because I think he would say that for himself personally. You know, a lot of people have covered this, but I don't think you can overstate. You know, people back when he was hurt in spring, they said, well, he'll be okay in the summer. And then he was hurt in the summer, and then he got hurt and wasn't able to do even in the training camp. And it's like, well, he'll be fine for the game. And I was like, no, like, one of the reasons I could throw the ball to Chris Doering on a corner route every time in stride is because, like, we threw that route 5 million times in January and February and March. And the amount of reps that you get with your receivers and processing is invaluable, even more so for a kid who is a true freshman and didn't play a lot. It's not like he was Tom Brady in his 12th year and, you know, missed a little bit. So I think that was really, really a tough thing for any young person to go through, to go in without even developing. You combine that with the fact that, you know, just because of his profile and his history and his NIL numbers and all that stuff, he's kind of the savior of the program. That kind of creates, you know, for a kid in that position, you know, psychologically, there's this weight of expectation, but you're not developed. So then I think when things start to go wrong, you can have some crisis of confidence. You cannot see the field well. You know, it's just part of when things happen. You don't see things. Things go faster versus slower. And I also think that, you know, this particular offense has some positives and some negatives. The Napier offense, I think one of the negatives is it's really complicated for a quarterback. You know, there's times where I'd sit in there and I'd be like, by the time I got done processing the original lineup and the personnel and the original shift and then the second shift and the first fake motion and the second motion and then read the start of the Mac to the Will, and by the time I got the ball in my hand, I was just tired mentally. It's like, how am I supposed to look off a safety? I just used all my brain power just to get the ball snapped. So I feel like that was difficult for him too. Yeah, I think there's other offenses that are just much simpler and conceptually and easier. So, you know, and then I just got some habits as a quarterback. I think when he knew where he was throwing, if it was man coverage and he was on platform, he was just absolutely amazing.
Yep.
He can in weird situations make deep throws like I've never seen. But, you know, when he's in his zone coverage and he's going through his progressions, I think he gets out of position, and then it's just really hard to make a good throw when you kind of got out of position. You're throwing off wrong leverage or your wrong base. And so those are things he's got to clean up. You know, I don't know any inside of this right now, but I would imagine there's going to be quite a quarterback competition here coming up. And I don't know how that plays out, or I don't know how NIL plays into that. But I think I respect that DJ has always wanted to be a Gator. You know, last year, I think he was part of the reason that team held together. I think it's part of the reason that people didn't leave. It's part of the reason we have the roster we do now. So I think his loyalty meant a lot, and I really appreciate him. You know, he asked me to watch film with him soon, so we'll be doing some of that. And also, like, some people have mentioned this too, we've got a pretty dynamic guy in there at number 2. Trammell, I think, has the capability to be an outstanding quarterback, and I haven't really watched Will Griffin coming in, but he seems to be really prolific as well. And so I'm sure it'll have a lot going on that, but that'll be fun to see it play out.
For sure. And then one more angle on that. You mentioned almost maybe watching some film with Lagway coming up, and hopefully I'm assuming film of whatever the offensive coordinator will be coming in at Florida. What would you be looking for if you were Sumrall when it comes to an offensive coordinator?
Well, I think somebody that's creative and innovative. I think someone that has shown that they can do multiple things. You know, I love the idea. Sumrall said something the other day that it really stuck with me. We want the defense to have to cover every blade of grass. So when I think of that, I think of both horizontally and vertically. And how do you stretch the field in both dimensions as far as you can? Because the more you can stretch the field in those dimensions, and then you've got guys like Vernell Brown, Dallas Wilson, and some of these burners that are coming in. I love Aiden Mizell and Tank as well. Like, we got a lot of good good players that you get them out in space, man, and just dynamic things can happen. And then when that happens and you've got a battering ram as a running back and there's not as many people plugging up the hole, that's dangerous too. So I love that idea. I do like of using different tempos. And, he said something too that I really appreciated. He said, Danny, you can try to build your ideal system and find players to fit it, but you also get certain players and you've got to be able to adjust to what they do. And so I do think an offensive coordinator that has been exposed to multiple types of systems that can adjust to the players that they have would be important. But man, we don't want to how to figure out how to win every game by 2 points, man. Let's win the close games when we have to, but let's blow some people out. Somebody was telling me, in fact, Chad, this is maybe too much information. In one of our first calls with Chad Chatlos, he said, one of the stats we want to look at is what are all these coaches' records in close games? Because, the SEC is tough. It's like the NFL and all the games are going to be close. And I was like, you know what Spurrier's record was in close games? Not good. We just didn't have any. Let's go do that. So that's what I'm looking for. Let's win some games by 2, 3, 4 touchdowns and get out of there happy. How's that sound?
I would absolutely love it. I mean, and what we've seen in recent years in college football, though, is especially in the SEC, there are a lot of one-score games in the way that, hey, Alabama's not blowing teams out like they were. Georgia's not blowing teams out like they were anymore. There's a lot of one-score close games now. Well, let's go back to 1990 one more time and let's bring somebody in who bucks the trend. And we do have some big point spreads by the time the final whistle blows for a game. But and one more thing on that, Danny, that I absolutely love, because I've said it when you guys did it, and this is what I loved about Steve Spurrier's offense more than anything. You guys dictated what was on the field, not the other way around. The defense dictates you. You guys dictated the game. And that's a big selling point for me on offense.
Yep. No, I think you got to be aggressive. You can do that. I think it's a balance. I agree with you. And, if you want to run the ball and they put 11 guys on the line of scrimmage, you probably should throw it. And if you want to throw the ball and they put, got 9 guys in coverage, you should probably run it. There's some truth to that. But man, I saw some too many times I see, just the way that a defense is playing against their offense. I'm like, oh man, if anyone ever played us like that, there's about an 85% chance we're scoring a touchdown on that play. So and then we'd run a bubble screen for a yard or a run up the middle. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it just seemed like defenses baited the last offense into what to do. We know what you're going to do. We'll bait you into it. And there you go. It's just game over at that point.
Yeah. You got to give defenses are better. There's more sophistication. If Spurrier, we're running our system right now, we probably have to make a lot of adjustments, and I doubt we'd have that. So you do want to blow people out, but you've got to figure out how to do really good in one-score games. Right now, I would give Kirby Smart a lot of credit. Yeah. They're having a phenomenal year. They beat some teams pretty good, but they've had to adjust, and they've been in dogfights, no pun intended, and they've won most of them.
For real. Danny, I cannot thank you enough for reaching out, coming on Gators Breakdown. Fan base, Gator Nation, certainly go be excited for it. Gators Breakdown Plus members, I see them in the Discord right now. I was like, hey guys, we're recording right now. And they're like, you're recording with the GOAT. So Danny Wuerffel, I can't thank you enough. Like I said, 13-year-old me right now would not believe I'm in this spot. So I can, one more time, big thank you for coming on Gators Breakdown.
You're welcome. You're doing a great job. I'm really excited about being a Gator. We talk about Jon Sumrall. I'm excited. I think the new kind of model with the GM is innovative and is going to really create a better system and stability and a better roster. I think it's going to let the coaches coach better instead of doing all the other things that they had to do. And so, I tell you what, next, if we win an SEC or get to the playoffs, I'll come back on your show. And so we'll make that a deal. You got my number. You reach out and then, of course, if the coach isn't very good, don't blame me. No, I'm kidding. I love it. It's going to be great. Go Gators.
Go Gators.